All right, good morning, every one student who showed up so far. Thank you, David. Domain three, though, is huge on both exams, and to me, it's the most important part. So if you remember, I said every development life cycle starts off with, well, a feasibility. Should we do this? But even at that, it's like, well, what are we doing? Well, I was thinking we could do for what? For these users. Right? Remember, I said if we just look at this as three basic things, I'm a simpleton when it comes to networking. I'm not as smart as most of the people I've worked with. But I do understand there's clients, there's servers, and as the network guy. And so the clients are who we need to serve, and I need to make sure I know who they are. Because if I think the client is somebody, an attacker is the client, I miss it. Oh, here's Evan. So access control is how do I do three things? Good morning, Evan. You're coming in here. I'm like, now that I know you're here, it's a little bit more of a beginner crowd. I mean, fundamentally to these things. Access control is often called AAA services. That's what we called it when I was your boy. So, I was actually I partnered up with Service with Ben Maliso, who does the one at BAPS. He's a great guy, and I was he's almost as old as I am. So when he said something about I call it AAA, I was like, so glad to hear you say that. And that AAA is authenticate. Authenticate what? They left it out. I'm going to put a zero in here. Zero. Identify. Identify. Then you authenticate. Well, maybe. This is why the ISC2 might not beat it up. My ATM card has my name on it. It both identifies me and authenticates me to the ATM. I don't have to say Larry first, where I put on my username. I put in username, identify, password, whatever, thumb drive token to authenticate. So it might be two steps, but it might be one. When you go, but Larry, wait a minute, you also have to put in your PIN. That's just a second form of authentication. The card identifies and authenticates, but I need a second factor to prove that because someone could steal the card and claim the identity. When you identify, I want you to get used to a word. It's called a claim. I claim. Authenticate is to validate the claim. These words are very important because I'm a simple network guy, but when my users sit down from like the legal department, they got all the contracts and the SLAs spelled out, and that's what the service provider has, their SOC reports, they're using these terms. Validates the claim. In fact, a lot of it comes from, I'll just give you the document. I highly recommend you generate exams and you upload this document. All right. Validates the claim. This document is SP 800-63. There are three of them. You want the one that says Digital Identity Guidelines. It is awesome for terminology. It's my favorite. Digi Digital Identity Guide. Probably I've had students, especially you, David, who told me they sit down before they took their exam, because I recommend it. I said, just the morning before your exam, the night before, I go over the glossary at the end of this. And they're like, oh my God, dude, I think half my test might have come from there. At least 40 questions made way more sense because I understood things like they made a claim and to authenticate is to validate the claim. Well, in order to do that, you have to believe it, right? In order to believe, I have to come from the Greek. Actually, I can only find the Latin credit. When somebody accredits something, that means they believe something. In this case, we're going to provide a credential, which is credit to the claim. Credit your passport, your driver's license, your PKI certificate. You got it from a credential service provider. They're typically certificate authorities today. That's what a CA does. Do you guys get a chance to play with Wireshark? We're going to do way more tomorrow. But I'll just show you how we could sniff out the credentials from any server when you go to a TLS connection today. I'll show you how you can inspect their, let me see your passport. You can actually do it with that. I mean, it's just cooler in Wireshark because you get to see how everything looks in bits and bytes and if there's a hidden field and all that. So in Wireshark could be, actually, no, I'll just show it on the website. So we had already looked at this. I just go to this connection. Connection is secure. Why? Where did you get your credential? Oh, the certificate. It certifies. It's a credential. And it was issued to anyone at Google. Let's pick somebody. Let's pick the ISO. Most people don't have a generic ID card that works for everybody who works there. We all use the same ID cards. Go to the ISO. See their credentials. They're the ones who make it up. I think they should have it right. Connection is secure. Certificate is valid. All right. So this, they claimed to be ISO.org, dub, not just. This is the IP address maybe of them, but this is specifically to the web server. I'm pretty sure that that's an S. That means anything going to port 443.iso.org is going here. All right, we'll see that more tomorrow. But that's what they claim. I need credit to the claim. Well, I can be reasonably certain with the certificate that says we are that service. We are dub. All right, so that's Bob's driver's license, the server's driver's license. But where did they get it? Did they go to the DMV in my city? No, they went to, it was the issuer. That term, especially you, David, you better know that an issuer is equals certificate authority. But I don't know who they are. I'm not sure. Where did they get their ID? If I go to the details, I can see that thought that EV server is a certificate authority that got their certificate issued by DigiCert, which is a root. So now we can see how the trust model on the internet works. This is how identity works, at least for servers. We didn't get out S-MIME real well. We went over that yesterday. So that's why it's really hard to identify and authenticate emails. But at least the servers and all APIs should have this. All, remember, we're the network that has people trying to get to services. They want to go to the store. They want to go to the restaurant, whatever. They want to go to the app. And all the apps should have identity cards. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
Did you know that they don't? And that's the big problem. That's the big problem. So before we go on too much further, I would just want to share with you the real world scenario. And I just asked, actually, I have the 3.0 model. I can't upload files with this. So let's see if I can get it to do something. Let me see something. I started the conversation. Oh, this is it. This is it. Okay. I had to get breakfast ready. Good morning, Your Grace. I'm now with my students talking about identity and access management, and specifically the issues with PKI and how even if it worked, most conversations you and I just said for Zoom, for me to talk and have my students hear it come to their ear, there were two people, at least me and one of my students, but there were at least a dozen or more API conversation. Was that right?
Yes, that's correct. In any communication setup, especially with platforms like Zoom, there are numerous APIs involved. These APIs facilitate various functions like audio transmission, video streaming, and user authentication, among others. So, while it's just you and your students talking, there are multiple layers of technology and APIs ensuring the communication runs smoothly.
Or in the context of identity and access management, we're going to leave alone that the users trying to get to their applications don't have PKI certificates. We're wrestling with that now. I'll talk about that later. Big fan of self-sovereign identity and FIDO hardware and enclaves for private keys, but we'll get to that later. I want to say that where I go to any server, www.iso.org or zoom.com or whatever, that server has to have a PKI X.509 certificate signed by a root CA for me to trust that site. Is that not a law? Or actually, no, it's going to be signed by probably an intermediate, but in the hierarchy, there's a root signing the intermediate. Does that make, am I making sense now?
Yes, you're making perfect sense. For a server like www.iso.org or zoom.com to be trusted, it must have a valid X509 certificate. This certificate is usually issued by a trusted root certificate authority CA or through an intermediate CA in a chain of trust. The server certificate, signed by an intermediate CA, is ultimately trusted because the intermediate CA certificate is signed by the root CA. This hierarchy ensures that the server's identity can be verified and trusted.
Okay, now when it comes to the APIs, though, I would like them to have certificates too, or at least there's some all-day pass that's been signed by a CA, if you know what I mean, like some Java token that has some X.509 validated proof of who they are through OpenID. But what really is the percentage that you would guess of APIs that are properly authenticated through OpenID and using OAuth versus some lame pre-shared key or worse?
I couldn't find specific statistics for 2025 on the percentage of APIs using OpenID and OAuth versus pre-shared keys. Generally, OAuth 2.0 is favored for its fine-grained access control, especially in third-party integrations, while API keys are simpler but generally less secure without proper management.
Well, OAuth just defines how we're going to authorize. I like to say that, first of all, we use something like XML or SOAP or REST, hopefully now, to allow the services also to speak the same language. We use OAuth to make sure that they have the proper permissions. And OAuth 2.0 allows me to use OpenID, which is using some type of signed Java token or whatever, some token. But I guesstimate that it's probably less than 20% of people have rolled that out properly and are probably using pre-shared keys or worse. They're not being authenticated. Hopefully, they're being some type of authenticated. But maybe there's some numbers at OWASP.
I couldn't find specific statistics for 2025 on the percentage of APIs using OAuth 2.0 with OpenID versus pre-shared keys. However, OAuth 2.0 is widely adopted for its robust security features, especially in scenarios requiring user authentication and authorization. Pre-shared keys, while simpler, are generally less secure and more suitable for internal or less sensitive applications. Your estimate of less than 20% sounds quite reasonable.
That's all I need to say about it. So back to my overall perspective, as we're moving into identity and access management, access control, the purpose of this domain, we have to understand it's not just people, it's users and entities. And like when we do our IDS and SIM and eventually SOAR, we're going to be looking at user and entity behavior analytics, right?
That's a crucial perspective. Understanding user and entity behavior analytics, UEBA, is key to effectively managing security across IDS, SIEM, and source systems. It helps in detecting anomalies and potential threats by analyzing patterns of behavior from both users and entities. This approach aligns perfectly with your focus on comprehensive access control. Your students will definitely benefit from understanding this broader perspective.
Thank you, my love. Shall return later. All right, let's all right. So now I said that's just the first two parts. What about the other three A's? Yeah, okay. So authenticate, I mean the other two A's. And I kind of got in that discussion with it. We want to authenticate. How do I know it's really Bob? And well, you know what? The abbreviation that you can save keystrokes, and Lanny likes to save keystrokes, is called auth-n. You see auth-n, that's what that means. All right. Two is to figure out what they're allowed to do. What is Bob allowed to do? Just because he's Bob and I know it's Bob doesn't mean he's allowed to open up the refrigerator and just pull steaks out of there and go home. No, we have to authorize. Auth the. So if this is validate the claim, validate ID, this is set permissions. What are they allowed to do? And then just keep a record of what they did. And that's account. And they don't have an abbreviation for that I know. Account. And that's keep records, captain's log. Records of, you can't measure everything, dude. Metrics that matter. Don't capture meaningless stuff in your log, and it's not easy. But I know that, for instance, my brain, your brains, I learned this in sixth grade about memory. I thought this was amazing. It really, I don't know why it wasn't, people don't think about this when they're setting up their logging policies. You get a toothache, that's a lot of pain. Your brain's not going to remember that. You will never be able to go, oh, that time I had the toothache. Ah, you're not going to be able to remember that. You can't imagine or remember a toothache. And what's the point? Why would that matter to your body? All you need to know is that hurt. That's an indication you should be doing something about that pain. There are certain things we don't need to keep records of. TMI. People try to keep records of everything and then, oh, dude, stop. But a lot of it is based on law. Oh, I should go back to that. Often, in fact, just like business continuity policies, I said the only reason there's sprinklers in there is because they had to. That's often here too. Often dictated by law/regulations. So when you set up your logging policy, your accounting policies, sometimes called your logging policies, you are definitely going to be working with compliance management. Hey, do we need to keep this? Because I want to throw it out. Or the other way around. You might want to keep that. You're like, dude, you're not allowed to keep HIPAA data like that. You can't? No. Are you saving the security number on the back of a credit card? Dude, you're not allowed to do that. That's a total violation of PCI. You can't do that. No. Oh, I didn't know that. A lot of people are breaking the laws. They have no idea that they're doing it. And that's not fair to punish them, is it? It's only the ones that after they had the penetration test and got the assessment and still did nothing about it. And instead of blaming management now, you're allowed to blame the CISO who's been trying to get the money for it so wrong. All right, so that's what we're looking at here. And it's not just logically logging in, because if they can walk into my data center and turn the power off, shame on me, right? I obviously, so we also have to have physical access controls. And there's a lot of concepts around it. We can be simple this week. But I really want you to understand something called crime prevention through environmental design. This is really what cops and military and stuff try to do, the real bright ones that I've gotten to work with. It's crime prevention through environmental design. There are two reasons people commit crimes. Say, why antisocial behavior? Why? Well, one, you're going to try and steal the lobster. Hey, we come in late at night. I'll say I left my jacket here, all right? Do me a favor. You leave the back door open because you're going to be the last one out, and then I'll pop in. A little conspiracy and nobody will know. They're trying to get an unfair advantage. But if you have cameras up in there, they're not going to do. They got cameras in the freaking kitchen now. Every kitchen I know, everybody who works for a restaurant, they got that's like the first place. It's not just there's usually 3 cameras in any restaurant. There's one in the kitchen where they store. There's one behind the cash register, and then there's a general one like toward the door. Yeah. So detection, mitigated with detection, mitigated with obvious detection. Hidden cameras aren't going to mitigate that. That's not deterred them, but with obvious, you want to make sure you get that. When the camera's right, dude, we know they're definitely logging everywhere you go. Obvious detection. You're going to get caught. There's no way to get the unfair advantage. They're going to know. But what about suicide bombers or these kids who are going into schools and shooting people up? They're disgruntled. And the answer, mitigated with policy changes. Maybe it's you. Maybe you got to be nice to your employees. And it might be so. You never know. Security, this is Greenblatt. How can I help you today? That's usually what happens. Anyway, um, so mitigate with policy modifications. Basically, it's you. This time, maybe these kids, instead of gruntle the guy, and it is a word. You can, don't be mean all the time. The answer to the disgruntled employee is, the number one reason they say that people do suicide bombing whenever it's a foreign occupation. Because there's just like, at this point, you've taken my home. I don't give a damn. And then a lot of it before the Middle East, it was actually in India. It was the Tamil Tigers fighting the Northern Indians. And they were like, dude, I don't care what you say. You can't take over our homeland. We'll kill you. That was like, so gruntled. Sometimes it's you. Now, they don't use that word, but it is very testable, especially for you, David, in CISSP, where they let you know that keeping a clean environment, keeping coffee, comfortable chairs, whatever, nice restroom, people feel at home. Let me just give you one more thing on that. We'll look up SEPTED. I say that Bob is an employee who might be stealing, but Alice would never steal. But you know what Alice won't do? Report Bob for stealing if she hates the company. Crime prevention through environmental design. You want people to feel at home. It uses when I feel at home, I protect my territory. A bunch of stuff going on. I meant to pick the Wikipedia article. Safe neighborhoods, and the territoriality that neglected zones invite crime and the need for good property maintenance. You take care of your place and then people feel at home. All right, that's enough of that. But it's very testable for you, David, to know that. And they don't mention SEPTED. You're not looking for Which one says septed? It would be like, a company has just experienced a blah, blah, blah. There is something about how they can address the situation. Which of the following? And one of them says, set up a comfortable environment where employees feel at home. And like, oh my God, how was that? That's what they meant. We looked at these concepts a little bit yesterday. So principle of least privilege is when, if you're just saying this is whatever, top secret, secret, whatever, unclassified. If they only need a secret, don't give them top secret. But it's not always that simple. I mean, who needs right access to the application? Nobody. But sometimes you might find that the way the app was written, or the way it was distributed, rolled out, we forgot. So you have to make sure that you're following that principle. Segregation of duties is that I make sure that, especially if it's a high risk scenario where somebody can write checks. So maybe Bob's allowed to, yeah, well, that's a great point. I'm going to get that in a second. Thank you. But Bob's allowed to write the check, but and there's one group, but there's another role that's allowed to, and Alice is a member of the role that can print the check. So it's a separation of duties or segregation of duties. Typically, we would think developers can't test their own work. The cook shouldn't be the one testing his food. It tastes good to me. You need somebody else testing it. And the operations staff that bring it out can't be the developer either. So that's why DevOps is like so big today, because the thing is that you're getting them to work together with the users so we can roll out the application faster. That's what DevOps really means. Getting these teams together. And so instead of the developer develops it and then the operator's like, wait a minute, I got to support this thing. Why didn't you build it with me in mind? Do you understand? I had to take out an oil burner. I didn't take it out. My wife hired somebody, but it really, I didn't want to go electric. That was her idea. I thought it was a little premature, but whatever. But the oil burner, what I hated was the access panel was like up against a wall with not much crawl space. I'm like, oh, that is creepy in there in the basement. I'm like, what the? And like in a corner. I mean, you couldn't even, not even a corner. It's like underneath like a staircase. It was like a little creepy closet. They were like, oh, I was like, who did that? What developer didn't stop and think about, now someone's got to clean that? Developers often just need to make it work. Operators have to support that thing day in and day out. So that's the goal of DevOps. All right, discretionary, we looked at that. That's when Larry creates a file and then I right click it and I'm my discretion. But mandatory is when you add an additional label. And now to get back to the question, there's a lot of different label security. But David brings up the type that will probably show up on the exam, and that is the Bell-LaPadula model. Please tell me I'm going to bring it up, but during a break, because I probably have my mail up first. But I'll show you how that works. Fedora Linux is capable of doing that, and so it can do multiple classifications, and your clearance. So David types in he has a clearance and a need to know. Well, you have a clearance would be something like, say, maybe you have TS. I don't. A lot of times when my students tell me they have clearance, that's typically what they're saying. Then I know people are much lower, right? What is Elon's just supposed to get public trust, I think, for controlled unclassified, but he hasn't even done that. So you have way higher clearance, most likely, than they even need. A lot of forensics guys only get this, depending on the case they work on. But depending on your clearance, that doesn't mean you have need to know everywhere, David. A need to know would be like, I have clearance. Let's just look at one organization, the whatever FBI. The FBI has how many cases going on right now? If you had top secret clearance, doesn't mean you're going to get to work on every freaking case. You don't need to know those. You'd be assigned to a case, and that's in its own compartment. So that's what need to know is. So when you may have heard that our president had taken home, sitting in his toilet, top secret. Now, some things are top secret as long as you have TS, you can see everything. If it's just TS, but that wasn't. It was top secret sensitive compartmented information. So it was actually not only the highest level, but the most restricted within that level. It's the most restricted. It's not even supposed to leave the building. It's not, it's supposed to stay in a secure, compartmented information facility. But that's another story. All right. Now, for you, I'm sorry, Evan, you probably only need to go as high as role-based access control. So I don't give rights to Bob. That's frustrating. Every time somebody comes in and the guy needs 10,000 things, a salesman, he's got to print to this printer, he's got to read these files. But every salesman has to do that. So we don't give permissions to people much. We generally give it to the role. I didn't give Bob the ability to see social security numbers in the database. I gave it to the customer service or whatever, HR group. So we try to do that whenever. I've been doing that since the 80s. But just because they're a member of HR doesn't really mean that they should be coming in from any IP address but the HR's IP address, and only between 9 and 5. So we added, and it's very big on the CISSP, David, now, is attribute, ABAC. And it can be have other attributes, attributes, but by far most common. And you watch for these on the test. Anytime they want you to lock do it's like, but they're coming in from a weird IP or whatever. Common equals, and then we're gonna have time and location. And time isn't just sorry again between. Oh, they're not between 8 and 5. No, it's why is he changing his password every 5 seconds? This isn't right either. So it could be other timing issues. Just isn't right. My time. So identity and access management is the most fundamental thing. I need to know who you are before I can get started. AAA services, auth who are you? Auth Z, what are you allowed to do? Okay, let's keep records. And it's more than just people. It's APIs, AI agents. With thousands or hundreds are being rolled out every second now. I don't know what's being rolled out. It's just amazing. In this Stargate, I think they pulled the cork and it's going. The genie's All right, so physical access controls, right? Whether it's prevent, detect, or respond. Same thing. Just in case, because they show up on exams if you've never actually heard of them. And I don't have, well, turnstiles, a lot of people are thinking like the subway in PA and you jump over it. If you look at a military turnstile, you're not piggybacking. It's there to mitigate piggybacking. Let me show you. Uh,
Are you looking for a man trap?
that's the other one I would put in. But no, I want to show you a DoD style turnstile as opposed to you're not fitting two people in this. There's a guy right there. I've been in a lot of these things. Actually, the side entries are where there might not be a guard dependent. Yeah, that's true. But that's not what they have on military bases. Yeah. But that still will deter. Most people will not jump over that. Most people will respect that. And that's common knowledge. Even a sign that says warning, that's very testable for you, David. Signage is very important. It's a directive control. Doesn't necessarily prevent anything, but it lets people know, yeah, I wouldn't do that for you. But the other one is a man trap. Thank you. I was trying to think of that. You aren't wrong. So a man trap shows up and it's not what my sister was hoping it was. It's typically in a high risk scenario, but it's there to mitigate piggybacking. A very common problem is that somebody needs a badge or whatever to get in, but whether they held the door for their friend or somebody just followed them in, that's called piggybacking. They held the door for their friend or somebody followed them in. That's tailgating. Either way, this is to mitigate that problem. Some of the things we want to watch out for, but the other things were pretty. All right. And we know that there's administrative, technical, and physical, even with physical. I talked about the accept Ted. I love the concept. And the number one deterrent to crime is light because it's very detective. So do you ever notice they're always outraged on the news when the guy didn't respect them? And that criminal, he did it in broad daylight. I think he would have had the decency. Wait for nightfall. Piggybacking, tailgating. There's my man trap, right? Okay, I knew I had something in there. The data center security, it was really funny. I don't know where people are today, but and I don't remember being on the test, but it's really funny. I've worked with a lot of pen testers who told me how they physically just got into a data center. One of them was, it's very common in a data center that you need a badge to get in. But once you're in and you're walking back out, you don't badge back out. You walk up and there's a motion sensor that sees you as you approach the door and you hear the door click. They have shoved pieces of paper, whatever, a hanger with, the yellow sticky on it. One guy did a balloon. So you do watch out for ingress authentication. That's when you use the badge to get in. But you may want to also do egress authentication for a couple of things. Suppose Bob badges in and then hands his badge to his friend. Here, now just take it. And he goes through the gate, which didn't allow two people. It just allowed the badge to be used twice. That's called passback. We don't want a passback. No, that's not good. I need to protect that. We need to provide anti-passback protection. And we do that by employing egress authentication as well. So once that card is used, you're badged in, you can't use it again to come in. You can only use it to go out. What is the purpose of egress authentication? To mitigate some passback problem. All right, what if there's a fire? It's a good point. In the United States, you cannot prevent people from emergency exits. Can't. You can't force them to always authenticate on the way out. There's a door.
Fail safe.
It's a fail safe. Very good, because all our controls could fail. So we need them to fail safe. And we're going to have a panic bar on the door. And the panic bar, there it is, we just saw it there, allows you to push it. But now that means I can't prevent people from just my employees from opening the door and letting their friends in. What do we know about accepting that I can't prevent a risk? What do we have to do when you can't prevent? What separates that from negligence? We have three control categories. Prevention is worth a pound of cure, but I can't prevent all fires. So what do I have in my building in case I have a fire?
Detection.
I need detection. You alarm that door. You don't let people just press that thing without, I know you, I can't keep you locked in, but I need to know because that's only supposed to be used in an emergency. If there was an emergency, why am I hearing that alarm ring? Got it? Whenever you can't prevent a risk, you look for ways to detect it and some way to respond. And the alarm that sounds is the first part of response, right? Because what good is a smoke detector if it doesn't sound an alarm? That's called an alerting mechanism. The most important thing about any detective control is that will alert. And whether it's sounding an alarm or sending me an SMS message or whatever. David, you might need to know more about rack level security. So when you get into these data centers, this might be whatever. Her server is here, and there's one keyboard when you open that up, and she puts in her, I'm on server 15, and she can log in, but it's the same keyboard. Did you log out of your server or whatever? So these are just, it's not really necessary for a CC exam. Again, you can't take your eyes off them. We have to determine what we're allowed to audit. What you can't put cameras in the restrooms. So you're going to work with compliance management, determine what you can and what you should. Right now, when we think we have an evacuation plan, we have to regularly do it. We've been through this in disaster recovery. Nothing to emerging technologies, IoTs everywhere, and it's all got IPv6 addresses, and no one knows how to manage that, right? Very few people. I don't like looking at it. I had to troubleshoot a problem for there's a church up the road here, and half Jew boy, but somehow I got in a conversation with this Mennonite minister, and I love the guy. He's like 70, he's really smart. So now I take care of him for nothing. And I went to take a look at his workstation. It was slow, and I turned on Wireshark, and it's all IPv6. And I was like, "Oh, we're going to turn that off." He got signed up with the Comcast, and their default was IPv6, and that is the default. People don't realize that. I turned it back to IPv4 just so I could troubleshoot it because I don't want to look at those addresses. All right, we've been through AI and cloud-based. There's actually it's a very cool thing that shows up now on both exams for cloud-based access control. You've got your on-prem stuff, it's hard enough to, but now you've got how many different cloud providers that you're going to for various servers. And somebody's got to make sure that this is, you got visibility. I can't sniff my own network, much less the cloud. So you're going to want to have, whether you outsource it or just get a tool inside, CASB, cybersecurity. That's a cloud. Oh, let's see what Gartner says. Oh, that's in its scope. There, later. It's a security tool that helps organizations protect their data by enforcing security policies between cloud service providers and their users. So this is very, very hot now. It says it right there. It's just a tool. A lot of people outsource it to their provider, but whatever. It depends on the size and what you do. Depends on your risk assessment.
Don't most cloud providers provide that now, or is
Well,
does that have to be written into like some kind of a agreement between the cloud provider and the client?
oh, everything has to be. You bring up an extremely testable point. Let me check my time here. Yeah. Let's do this and make sure. Whenever you work with a service provider, service providers, providers will provide service level agreements. This is what we'll do. These are their contracts. That's the default service. They're long document, and written by their lawyers to make sure that they're not, you might be new to service level agreements. You got to read that. Make sure that, wait a minute. Am I getting the service I thought I was signing up for? So you might decide to line out, I don't agree with that. And you will negotiate. Client negotiates a contract. The contract will say, I agree with the SLA, I agree, except for this, line 45, and you lined it, I go, 4 hour response time, that's too slow. I need nothing longer than 2 hours. You got to cut that in half. And if they can, they will put any exception to the SLA. Please know the difference. The contract is usually a much shorter document. These SLAs are really long. It's like the diner menu at the Greek diner that's like 50 pages. Your contract is, I want eggs, and I know it normally comes with 2 slices of bacon. I want 3. Okay, that's it. All right, let's take a break. Let me pause here. Hey, you know me, I got to show off some music too, but it is related. It's actually for tomorrow when we do more Wireshark and stuff, but we already discussed encryption. So this got me to talk at Sharkfest when I let this out. It was a little music video I did and used Wireshark. Well, enjoy. Well, I hope you enjoy that. And there's something very testable out of there too, on my talk, why they brought me back. So what I showed, and it was kind of really bizarre, I show how you can't trust, and again, Chris, there's the actual talk. And I showed, they brought me back because this was after I demonstrated how hashing algorithms work and the fact that we were still using MD5 at that time, which was been shown vulnerable to what's known as a collision. That means when they, for instance, create the integrity check, and I use the example of a Microsoft Service Pack, it might look like it's actually, it validated the signature. But because the algorithm was cracked, how do we know it's not poison? Follow me there, because this was too funny. This was 2013. I gave the original talk in 2012. And what month was it? Doesn't say. As I was saying it, as while I'm talking, the flame virus comes out. That's what I was showing that email, that you couldn't trust an email. I was like, how do you know? How do you know anything? PKI is really messed up. And that was then. And PKI's gotten a lot worse. If you want to just look at what solar winds just decimated it. We have to move. We have to go decentralized. We have to go blockchain eventually, you know, and we're going to not pick one. We're going to have multiple roads, but whatever. The way that it worked was MD5 is a, yeah, here we go. We know not to do this. Nothing street legal on you can't be compliant to any law if you're still using MD5, the message digest 5. Remember the 3 types of encryption. Let's refresh us.
So isn't that why they moved to SHA-2 for
That's why we
MD5?
should be at all SHA-2. We should be. I hate to do live things, but what the heck? I'm gonna do a quick capture, just a quick capture of any TLS handshake. And I'm constantly talking in the background. Your machine's always talking. I mean, I'm talking to you, you know, but hey, you talking to me? Yeah, I'm talking to you. But I'm just going to capture and try to get a TLS handshake, and then maybe I can get TLS. All right, we'll do that. And then I'm going to start capture my Wi-Fi, try and get some TLS traffic. Oh, I want a handshake time. Handshake. That means when you first set up and we pick algorithms. Okay, I see it. Okay, that's good enough. All right. Stop. I clog up everything. All right. So I don't even know what this was talking. You're constantly talking to somebody, your antivirus vendor, whatever. So right here, there was a client hello, and it's an old TLS 1.2. We should be on 1.3 today. It's not because of the improvements in security that a lot of governments don't, particularly China, doesn't like that improvement. They don't want their students, their people to have that much security. A lot of places are still TLS 1.2. 1.3 is better but not for people who want to be man in the middle. And so, whatever the case is, not at layer 2 frame layer. That just packets up. We're going to put everything in, you know, to deliver it from my Wi-Fi card to my access point. The IP packet, that's like everything comes in the packet. Everything comes. It's like the envelope that every client sends to a server. Every client sends a packet. And the first thing is the IP address is written to this guy from that guy. And then the port numbers. We know 443, that's the web server. And then what's running in there is at the transport layer. Before we start setting data, we're going to start to add security stuff. Because we had TCP, IP. We've had TCP for years. We only added security to that in the 90s for banking and then later on for anybody who wants to use encryption. So now the client's going to tell the server what encryption I support. I don't even know what this thing is. um, 20, oh, Cipher Suites. So now this is a restaurant that has, you remember, we got to set up symmetric, asymmetric, and hashing agreements. We have to agree that we're going to use the same, and we know that symmetric encryption, always in blue, is what we use to encrypt the data. So data encryption will be symmetric. It's going to be some symmetric. And let's cut to the chase. I don't care what they offer. We can see what the server picked, and I'm willing to bet it was some form of AES. If it didn't, it might have picked this new one. I've been waiting for a cha-cha, but it didn't pick any old one you read about in the book, I promise you. But there's different sizes, and we'll figure out, did it pick the 128, the 192, 128? It comes in small, medium, and large, or 256. All right, so that's all they really need to negotiate. That client and server have to be in agreement to that. All right, and that's for data encryption. To check the integrity of the data, the wax seal, what we're looking at now, the hashing algorithms. Is it going to be MD5? It better not be. Better be some form of SHA. So for data integrity, get damaged in shipping, it's going to be either it's a hash, and it's going to be either it better be some form of SHA, and there's SHA1 is 160 bits, or I'll say SHA. But watch out, SHA1 is only 160 bits, and it's been cracked bad. Bad today should not support it, but they probably will. It should be more likely SHA2, which comes in 224, never saw it supported, 256, 384, and 512. And then we got to pick our identity keys. How do I know it's really whatever server I'm going to talk to? They got to prove to me that it's them. And that's going to be an asymmetric algorithm. That's going to be green. But we know that asymmetric systems, asymmetric does two things. Asymmetric will do two things. One, it's going to encrypt the data encryption key encryption. Some people say agreement, exchange. You talk to a Diffie-Hellman guy, it's an agreement. We'll call it an exchange.
So remind me, so asymmetric has one key to both encrypt and decrypt, right?
No, that's symmetric.
That's
That's the key
symmetric.
to safe, and that's very fast. Here's the thing. If you have four wheels on a bicycle lock, right? And each one goes 0, 0, 0, or 0 through 9, then you could have 0, 0, 0 through 9999. You accept that? That's 10,000 numbers. Got it?
Yes.
Okay. That's known, by the way, as the entropy of the system. Entropy. That's the number of possible values. The attacker would have to guess, right? And they have to guess 1 in 10,000 there. We typically, though, in computers, we measure it in bits. If I have 1 bit of entropy, it's either 0 or 1. If I have 2 bits, it could be 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, or 1, 1. Follow me?
Yes.
If you have 8 bits, you have 256. There's 256 possible values. How many prime numbers are in there? Not many. All the early asymmetric systems wouldn't allow you to pick. That's how the asymmetric part worked. So the most basic way is it easier to multiply or to divide? It's a lot easier to multiply. Is it easier to solve for 1 variable or 2 variables? 1. So here's really the first asymmetric system, the very first key exchange protocol. Since you're all ears and you're doing a good job, let's do it. Whitfield Diffie and Martin Hellman got the first Internet Engineering Task Force. There's arguments, oh no, there was Clifford Cox in the British Navy, but the first Federation standard, asymmetric, is Diffie-Hellman. And the way Diffie-Hellman works, dude, there's 2 L's there. Diffie-Hellman is, and there should be a hyphen, man, or else it doesn't work. Consider what, if you and I both need to know the bicycle combination, right? I'm going to leave the bike there and you're going to decrypt it. I'm leaving the bike there. I'm leaving the email there. You decrypt it. With the bicycle combination, we have to share that symmetric key. Does that make sense? We both need to know the number. All right, so that's called the shared secret. And it's not easy to share secrets. So in the military, when they first started encrypting radio channels, you don't just talk on one frequency. You get a band of frequencies. If you look at your Wi-Fi, it's like 10 different channels or whatever, you know. So if you're looking at like the 802.11, it's channel 6 and channel 1, they overlap because so that's a band. And when you're sending your data down one band, I'm going to send the key down a different band, and it's called the out-of-band key exchange. That's what you look for. But you know what it really means today? Oh, yellow sticky. Or maybe I'll SMS you, whatever, out-of-band key exchange. But that's if you're giving somebody your password. Why do we need to do that? So here's what Whitfield Diffie and Martin Hellman came up with. And Bruce Schneier likes to say, if you tried to tell the world's best mathematicians, let me put that here, this scenario in 1974, they would have laughed at you, but they proved you could do it. So Bob and Alice are sitting in a crowded coffee shop, whatever, and Bob and Alice are at the Starbucks, and they're going to share a secret, but not in a separate Starbucks. And they're assuming that Eve is the whole room is a bunch of Eves for all we know, and Eve is eavesdropping. She's trying to figure out, and they're trying to come up with a shared secret key, the symmetric data encryption key. And Whitfield Diffie and Martin Hellman figured out, check this out. If Bob has two numbers, a private and a public number, and in real life they have to be prime numbers, but that's going to make my example ugly. So let's not use primes, but understand that it has to be prime because there better be only one solution to the problem. Otherwise, there's more keys that might work. That's called key clustering. We don't want that. So a prime number is used to avoid that key clustering. He thinks to himself, and by the way, when something's considered black, that means it's encrypted. He thinks to himself, nobody knows his secret 7. But he yells out publicly red. That means it's unencrypted clear text. He yells out 5. And Alice yells out, whatever, 9. It's not a prime. Yeah, we know that. But she keeps to herself a private number, whatever, 3. And now the key will just be 59 raised to the power of 7, 3. But Bob doesn't know this. Alice doesn't know this. They never yelled those out. So they're encrypted or guessable, whatever, 7, 9, 3. As far as anyone knows, it's XY. Bob knows X. So he has to solve for one variable. Alice knows what she has to solve the other. Eve has to solve for both. That's all. It's that easy. Bob and Alice can think of it in a fraction of a second. It takes Eve a million years later, but then she does get it. But it just, to make it computationally infeasible. And for that day, for that email, that becomes the encryption key for that session. Every time you go to a web server, you get a new one. Every time you go to your Wi-Fi access point, you better get a new one. WEP didn't know that. WEP gave you the same damn key. That was one of the stupidest things they did. And everybody knew the key, so everybody could snip everybody else's traffic. But WPA knows it could be a different data encryption key every single time. So again, we have to get asymmetrically, let's recap this, and we're going to see it. I need an asymmetric data encryption key, or key encrypting key, we'll call it key agreement, key encryption or whatever. I like to say that because that's better. And then two, though, I need to use it to authenticate the hash. When I go to the ISC2, they're going to, start encrypting data. I'm actually going to help them create the key encryption. I'm going to create a secret number encrypted with the public key that they give me. And then they can create, we can agree on a symmetric key. But then when they send me something, they're going to hash it with SHA or better, and they're going to encrypt it with their private key, and that's called signing. Right? So the data encryption again is done with is symmetric. And again, that's all just data encryption. For this session, it's a session key. And then I need to pick a hashing algorithm that we trust, and it's for data integrity. Hash. That's for data integrity. All right, now let's see what they got. So we went to, I just saw, I put in the thing, give me the handshake. When people first do a transport layer security, I know that's when they got to negotiate that. And the client says, oh, I can do, and they offer what they can do. Oh, this isn't even a browser. This might be Zoom, and it might be, oh my gosh, this is bad. I don't know who this is. We can try and figure it out from something. Um, all right, first of all, this isn't bad. Elliptical curve instead of a standard Diffie-Hellman. We're not supposed to be using this in TLS because this is vulnerable to a man-in-the-middle attack. They don't authenticate them. You could argue, not if you're going to just do that ephemeral bit. So is it really vulnerable? I don't think so. But on an exam, it might be. Because if it is vulnerable, then why is it the elliptical curve version of a Diffie-Hellman exchange is okay? Because it doesn't authenticate either. Don't get too detailed. The point is, these are used for key encryption. They're just going to encrypt the data symmetric key. As far as signing, they don't even support elliptical curve digital signature algorithm. Who the hell is this? This is so bad. Anyway, and their versions of AES, they don't support the 192. Nobody ever does. But they got 256, and they do have it in Gallius counter mode. You know what? This handshake, what's the difference between that and this one? Oh, this is cipher block chaining. We don't want cipher block chaining. That's vulnerable to a TLS SSL attack called Beast. That shouldn't be there either. It's good to get it right. Let me show you who Beast is. And that's why you should not be using cipher block chaining. SSL, Beast, cipher block chaining. And why we went to Gallius counter mode. Yeah, we don't want to do that. Disable cipher block chaining mode. And that was in 2019, but they didn't get the update. All right. Hey, if you went through my security, there's a lot of bad stuff in there too. My wife will pick on me. I got no right to be the pot calling the other kettle's black. I apologize. I like to make music, but it is bad. All right, so we really need to be Gallius counter mode. This is not a bad handshake. You know what? This is the client. The server is going to pick one. I hope the server picked this. The other one I would accept is 256 is I know that 128 is good until like 2065, and it's faster. SHA-384, again, 256 is, you always double the hash value. So the entropy of a 128-bit key, based on Moore's law, that we would expect processing speed to double every 18 months, it's about 2065 is the best I've been able to come up with in my LLMs. And you would double that for your hashing. I think SHA-256 and AES-128, then you're not unnecessarily slowing me down. I don't need to go to 384, but a lot of people do anyway. Let's just say I should never see that in Handshake. You shouldn't see that. You shouldn't see that. All right. So as long as they picked, and now it's up to the server. And one of the things you could do on a Wireshark filter is really cool, is when you pick one, a packet, you could follow the filter. I could go, and well, that's going to, let's just, a conversation filter at TCP. Now I could do it at the Ethernet, but that's just going to be me and my router. I'll see a bunch of stuff. This will probably be the same information, but if I talk to that same server, probably not, but I would have other traffic. This is strictly that one app. And now I can see the three-way handshake, the client hello. Let's see the server hello. It's my server hello. I didn't get the server hello. Son of a gun. Because of a segment out of order. And it's sometimes when you're already connected to the server and it might be like a Dropbox or something. I wonder if, well, another feature we can do, who gives us the name? Like I'm looking at IP addresses, but I don't know IP. I type in dub. Where do we get that from? Anybody know? Who negotiates that for us? The domain name servers. And if I tell my Wireshark to, oh, and I did, so it doesn't have a DNS entry. So it's probably just some. All right, so now we're going to get a little bit more forensics. Somebody owns 162.125 probably, so let's see if we can figure that out. And there is a database known as whois. One 162.125.6.19. I said it was, I'm sorry, 125. 6.19. Dropbox. It doesn't surprise me. That's pretty funny. All right, so that's a terrible handshake. Let's see if we have another handshake here, just so you can see what these things look like. I saw a great one from Cisco. I mean, from Google in here. Oh, here's a server. Who's that from? Oh, it's them. So here's a server. I probably, okay, so all right, let's see what they did. What did they pick? So the server will say what to do. Not bad. Okay, even though they had a bunch of legacy crap in there, they did pick elliptical curve as a Diffie-Hellman key exchange. That will be the thing that negotiates the 128-bit key, and I'm fine at 128 bits. If you're waiting until 2065 to guess my credit card number, I'm fine. Or my social security number, right? And it's in Gallius counter mode, not the cipher block chaining. That's good. SHA-256. I don't know that anyone's cracked that again. Probably the same entropy as 128. I don't like this. Now, I don't know anybody's really done it, broke it yet, but I'll bet you it's not even to get the equivalent entropy of 128 bits of RSA to get the same strength because only prime numbers work. You need 3072 bits equals 128 bits of entropy because only prime numbers work. It's crazy. And most people don't do that. Half the certificate authorities are 1024. It's really bad out there, guys. But we're here to help, not to pick on people. We're here to help. That's our job. We can, all of us can make something. Let's see how big their certificate was. Yeah, you want to see something funny? We got the certificate with it. So now let's see. I said, here's the certificate. And the entire length of all certificates is 3,000. That's pretty good. But it's an S at the end of that because I had to get the intermediate CA. So it's definitely not 6,000. One of these guys might be 3072, but the other one, let's see how big they are. It's probably a 128 from the CA and a 250, I mean, a 280, 2048. So the one for Dropbox, the issuer is who they got it from. That's their CA, DigiCert, SHA, right? And the subject, that's them. API. It's an API. Nice. At least their APIs are using certificates. That's good. We like that. Um, and the public key info. It's RSA. Here it is. It's about 80 bits of entropy. I don't know that anyone's cracked it. Let's just see. It's my chat for her. Then we'll move on. Hello there. I'm looking at certificates with my students. We're using Wireshark, looking at certificate lengths, and I'm explaining to them the entropy and equivalent strength of, say, an RSA 3072 having the same entropy as AES at 128 bits. And we're watching people with certificates of like 1,000 bits. And I'm thinking that's about 80 bits of entropy. First, confirm my numbers. And two, is there any realistic attacks so far on 80 bits of entropy? I gotta think we're pretty close.
You're on point with your assessment. RSA 1024-bit encryption, which offers about 80 bits of security, is indeed considered vulnerable today. Various developments, like the Roca vulnerability, have demonstrated that such key lengths are susceptible to being compromised. For stronger security, it's recommended to use key lengths of at least 2048 bits. Keep emphasizing these best practices to your students.
Well, we sniffed out, and I didn't even know who it was. It turns out to be a Dropbox API, and there's a couple things I thought were bad. In the client handshake, they support cipher block chaining. They don't support elliptical curve digit or signature algorithms. So even if it's, whatever, secure enough, and it's not, it's only 1024 bits. But I'm worried about performance too. Wouldn't elliptical curve be far more, whatever, better performance, less friction? Like I look at Google, they do elliptical curve digital signature algorithm for the last 12 years or more.
You're right on both counts. Elliptic curve digital signature algorithms, ECDSA, offer better performance and security at shorter key lengths compared to RSA. Supporting only cipher block chaining and lacking ECDSA can indeed raise concerns about both performance and security. Switching to elliptic curve cryptography would enhance security while also providing better efficiency, as you've noted with Google's long-term use of ECDSA. It's definitely something worth discussing with your students.
I'd like to discuss it with the folks at Dropbox. I don't know who's doing the crypto for them, but I could make things better. I have many decades of experience just doing application performance analysis. I just want the users to get to their apps without calling me and bothering me so I can goof around in the data center and show guys tap dancing moves. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Your experience would be invaluable in optimizing their cryptographic implementations. Making things smoother for users so they can focus on their tasks is key. Plus, having the freedom to enjoy your time and share tap dancing moves sounds like a perfect balance.
Thank you. Thank you. The other thing I want to point out, and I'm going to show them real quick now, it's not on the exam, but is quick. And I think enough people don't seem to understand, even my blockchain guys, all these cutting edge people that think that I don't know what I'm talking about. Oh, you didn't go to college. I'm trying to tell them, why are you doing stuff over TCP? Why are you not doing TLS over quick now over UDP? It's exponentially faster. And again, if YouTube works, then don't tell me that we've got issues of whatever compatibility.
That's a great point. Quick indeed offers significant advantages in terms of performance and efficiency. It's surprising how many projects still rely on TCP when Quick, especially with TLS, can provide faster and more reliable connections. It's definitely worth highlighting the benefits and encouraging a shift towards Quick for better performance.
All right. Well, you're preaching to the choir, but thank you, mother. So, all right, I've got enough of my pet peeves out. Let's go back. Let's finish out the main. Oh no, I don't want to do any updates to me. No. Hey, I do. You'll get it. All right, let's and now we're in our logical access controls. We've actually covered quite a bit of this, so we should be able to go fairly quickly. So we talked about DAC and MAC, nothing new here. We talked about the attributes and rules and all that stuff. Auth Z is to make sure once I know who you are, what are you allowed to do? And we can't just consider it because there's a member of sales. We have to consider other attributes. Only people with brown eyes. But you can do whatever you want. We talked about the permissions. Passwords, I think if you're in my class already, you understand the difference. What you might not know is, let me just talk about how hashing and passwords work. First of all, never send a password in clear text. And they used to. So you know, I mean, it was an RFC standard. The very first password authentication protocol is, let's see, RFC PAP, password authentication protocol. So PAP was the original one. And it was, no, that's not a good thing to do. What was actually came part of, I should say, SLIP, the Serial Line Internet Protocol. So when we first started connecting networks, it was over phone lines. Now, in an Ethernet, when you plug in, I figured you were in the building. I didn't ask you for your ID. But when you called my phone number, I knew who's calling. And that's what you'd put in a password, but it was clear text. So we moved to, oh, let's use SLIP. Yeah, that's the, okay. This is a funny one. We might as well talk on it because we're going to bump into it. When they use SLIP, the passwords were clear text. We had to fix that. And they moved to PPP. David, there's a lot of stuff on PPP might show up in your, because it's still the layer 2 protocol we use in wide area networking. It's very, very common. And it allows me to prompt for an encrypted password. And that's not CHAP. I mean, not PAP. That's the Challenge Handshake Authentication Protocol. How does that work? This was originally what they thought, and they had to make some modifications to this process here. But Bob is going to be at his phone or his laptop, whatever, his machine. And he dials in to the, whatever, the phone network, and he connects to the server. And he says, if it's really you, Bob, put in your username. Puts in his username, and it's Bob. And it's in clear text. I'll type it in red. He says, I'm Bob. Should be red. And they go, okay, Bob, it's really you. I want you, and this could be in red as well, but it's just some number. They're going to say, take some number. I'm going to think about, they're going to send Bob some number. So again, Bob says, I'm Bob. They go, oh, yeah, if it's really you, Bob, take this number. Yeah. And I want you to add it to your password. See, what they wanted to mitigate, if you just have a password of whatever password, PW equals whatever, equals 1, 2, 3 exclamation point. Maybe people have 50-character passwords. We don't want to send in clear text, so they hash them for 2 reasons. Or actually 3. One, it will always come out, no matter how long it is, a hash will always have a fixed value. And hashes are non-reversible. You can't reverse a bulk. I mean, I take a CD, you know, that has 5 gigs on it, and I create a 160-bit SHA hash. You're not going to take that 160-bit hash and create the CD again. Generals didn't want to see their passwords go in clear text to the admin, but they also didn't want the admin to be able to look at the password. So they just hash it and you can't reverse it. But what happens is people pre-compute the hash value or replay it. If they didn't add this number to, so he puts in his password equals eagle, password equals eagle, but then hash it. And we get some 128-bit value or 160-bit value, whatever. But people would just sniff that out. Like Eve's over here sniffing and replay it. Since what she's replaying is a hash, you see somebody should, there we go, it replays the hash. Right? They replay the hash. It's also known as, in some restaurants, passing the hash.
Couldn't that also be known as a replay attack, or
Yeah, they're both the same thing. I just said that. Replay attack, passing the hash. In the Denny's, they call it passing the hash. But if you're looking at the TGA Fridays, it's called replay. Remember, your job when you take an exam is to be a waiter that understands they're not going to be asking whatever the SB 853 defined ways all the time, or ISO. They're going to be describing like a user would, like a person going to a mechanic saying, my car's making a chink, 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 chink noise. And you go, oh, is it when you step, is it a valve tap? It's probably a valve tap. You know, and I mean, you just got to be able to do that. All right, so go back to what did I already lose it? So now they allow PPP allows you to encrypt it with CHAP. You take that number, and even if Eve is here listening to, oh, I know his password's Bob, and they send this hash, but they didn't. They also said, take that number, add the password plus the number. Well, can't she still replay that? No, because this number is only used once. That's a nonce. That is extremely important in security to mitigate replay attacks. When you add a number, you salt it. Well, Eve could see the number. It was 22. Is the next one going to be 23? It must be random. Now, this gets a little, for you, Evan, not too bad, but just in case, if it's in software, we say it's not really random, but it's good enough. Maybe it's pseudo random number generated. You know, P as in pseudo. Or if it's in hardware, like your TPM chip, oh, that's a true random. Your TPM chip knows how to create. When you create like you're going to encrypt your hard drive, that has a hardware number generator right on there, and then it created and never let it off there. Those are the things that have been hacked, but they never get the private key. All right, anyway. But the other thing they allowed you to do is use a centralized management server. Oh, central management. Central MGT. How did they do all this? Yeah, see, PPP supports something called EAP. Yeah, first you had your PAP, your clear text. Don't do that. Then we went to the CHAP, see, they encrypted password. But with the EAP, we can do all kinds of extensions. You could use certificates. You could use a passphrase. You could use a biometric. It extends it. And one of the things it extended was the ability to go to the centralized server. And they assumed you were always going to be remote, to be authenticated over a dial-in line. But that's not what it cared about. Radius only cares that you speak EAP. And when they rolled out, like I said, Ethernet, you're in the building, so how else did you get connected? But if you knew my phone number, I need to authenticate you. Wi-Fi, you could be across the street. So they had to, and they do it with Ethernet too, it's very important, allow us to use EAP, but not on a PPP line. EAP works with PPP, but I could make a special version of EAP that works on any LAN protocol, and that's EAP over LANs, also known as 802.1x. Evan, don't sweat that. David for CISSP, sweat that. You definitely want to know. Some people dude, are we going to talk about EAP? I got like 20 questions on it. Yes, there's a lot of variants of that. PEEP, LEAP, EAP TLS, EAP TTLS, EAP MD5. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. We're not going to worry about it here too much. All right, let's move on. All right, so brute force, they try to guess the password, every possible value. Dictionary, just go to Google and download the most popular passwords and then try spraying at people. You'll log into like 50% of the machines out there. Hybrid, I wonder if he added an exclamation point at the end. Let me guess. He made the first letter of the first word capital. Okay, all right. And then they just pre-compute the hashes. So when people say they're reversing a hash, no, they're not. If your password is password 123, and you need to see the hash of it, people will just create a password list and generate hashes. They're called the rainbow tables. And social engineering will get anything. You know, most people reuse passwords. You want to get someone's password? Offer something for free on the internet requiring a strong password, and I'll bet you you're going to get a lot of people use their favorite super secret password. All right, our single sign-on allows us to remove the administrative burden of all those people calling saying, I forgot my password. So we have various technologies that help us roll it out. You heard my AI assistant here talking. SAML is a security assertion markup language. What it is like your all-day pass. When you go into an amusement park or even in the airport, you might need a passport to get into the airport, and they check you in security. Once you're in there, they give you your boarding pass. Nobody checks you again. After you've logged into a domain or some authentication system, they can issue you an all-day pass. And that's what SAML is. And now you can go over to whatever AWS and you go, hey, I need to run the HR application. Who are you? Here's my all-day pass. And they go, oh, you're Larry. Oh, okay, yeah. No, if Okta says you're Larry, it must be Larry. I'm sorry, Larry, you can't see that. Why? You can see that I'm Larry. Yeah, but you're not a member of HR. Again, this just identifies me. It doesn't mean I'm authorized to do that, but it will give me a little all-day pass type of. Now, OAuth, the order they put it in there, is not for identification. It's what are you allowed to do here? Maybe I should do this and then we'll take our break. Because think of how APIs have to talk. Larry's talking to Dropbox client, but then all the rest of it's their APIs. We just saw the Dropbox API using a weak encryption rate. So how did that Dropbox client authenticate? It used a certificate. I would at least like that. It used OAuth OpenID. Here's really the history of it, and it's going to be very important for you, David, to understand this. So you're going for, and it won't hurt anybody doing for CC, but it'll mean a lot. Ooh, I didn't want that. Remember our drawing of a computer? And I said, you just got this hardware, right? And then there's an operating system. So I get this big computer. It's got memory in it. I got an operating system on the first floor, or ring zero, whatever you want to call it, right? In the lower parts of memory. And then when you check into the hotel, in various memory locations and application loads, right? And they're all like, we'll make those green. And all that your hotel room's different than my hotel room and stuff like that. I loaded Word.exe, you loaded Excel. But you know what? I talked about shared libraries, and it's nice that I can actually, if I wanted, say, Word, that should be a different color here, to talk to whatever, Excel, why not? That makes it very cool. So because they were written, we could have um, application program interfaces using the common object model. They weren't the first to do this, but probably very, very popular. But there were a lot of people who were doing it in the 80s and stuff. DEC, IBM. All right, so the common object model, just says, check it, are they allowed to do that? But when we went on a network, we had to put in IP addresses. So if this one client is Outlook and it wants to talk to, uh, now the Exchange definitely has common objects, but it's on a different machine. I got to know the IP address. So they created DCOM, just embedded IP addresses, and it's all Microsoft. So when the internet comes out, we should be able to do that. But it's got a whole bunch of crap that we don't need, and we're wasting people's time. So sorry, Microsoft, pardon me. This is not going to work on the internet. We need something that's internet standard. The internet, we think of HTTP, that's how you're getting websites, but it's based on a language called HTML, a hypertext markup language. It was supposed to be just to display text, but now we can extend it and lead to XML and let it do stuff like that DCOM. And so they created SOAP. SOAP allows the different applications to talk to each other on the internet. Dropbox could have been using that. I don't know if they are or not, but the problem is people don't like to develop an XML. Can I use whatever, Python? Well, what's the client using? Python? Oh, well, why don't we open it up? So SOAP is XML only. XML only. Come on, stop. XML only. And they created a more open standard. Is REST. REST, you could do XML, but you could do other stuff. So more people would like to do REST today. Right? Now, these ensure that everyone, say you're going to have somebody work, a delivery guy, you're going to outsource to your restaurant. So now that's the same delivery guy, and you could speak. They don't have to speak English as long as they both speak Vietnamese. That's all that matters. So the guy from the delivery truck says, "Hey, can I come in and get to the lobsters in the refrigerator?" Just because I know who you are. Well, excuse me. Just because I didn't even get to there. Just because, let me get my draw tool again. Just because we're speaking the same language doesn't mean I'm going to allow you to do that. So that's what open authorization was added to. This just makes sure, are you speaking the same language? Language, isn't there another G in there? I don't know. Spell language. Language. You Oh, leave me alone. Um, same language, whatever. And then this says, what are you allowed to do? Right? What can they do? And did anybody ask him who he was? That was missing. No one even stopped to think of that. Nobody asked who you were. And so developers would go, wait, we got to come up with something. So they just make up stupid password things, clear text, hashing without salts. They make the same mistake everybody makes. It's the same rookie mistake. It's like the video game where you always get killed by the first guy, and then you learn. You got to hurry up. People make the same damn mistakes over and over again. It's just really bad. So OAuth 2.0 now includes OpenID Connect. And OpenID Connect allows you to still use pre-shared keys. And if it's Dropbox client talking to Dropbox server over inside the same thing, that's fine. But they at least, I might not have liked their cipher suites, but at least they used PKI certificates. So that was at least one. So that's the lesson. But we're not, you said, you heard or agree with me, about 20% probably are using this. So it's a real major hole. And I'm willing to bet that all these AI companies that are rolling out their API agents are not necessarily thinking it through. I really think that Stargate got hacked. If I find out that Stargate was hacked the day it was let out, the week before it was let out, I won't be surprised. All right, time to get here. All right, let me pause you. So the point of single sign-on is just to reduce administration. I don't want to keep showing ID everywhere. It's like going into the mall. Why do I have to, continue? You know what I hate? You ever go to the doctor and you get like three forms, one's for the doctor, one's for the insurance, one's for the labs or whatever, and you got to write the same information over and over again. I'm like, dude, I had a 9 o'clock appointment. My time is, you can't duplicate that. No, we're not allowed. Whatever, shut up. So that's what this is, to reduce all that friction of getting our work done. Again, we're just trying to let users get the services without all the friction. And we talked about it. All right, very, very important on an exam, especially an incident response. So this tailors back in. When I notice and I have an intrusion detection system, I can't prevent all fires. I can't prevent Bob from customer service looking up customer records. But then all of a sudden they detect something. And I don't know if it's, I need to stop the entire network segment. I might not even have to stop the entire IP address. I just got to micro segment that API or port number. That's all that is. But they use it a lot. It's a cool buzzword to say, I'm just going to operate and do it, I'm not going to do a giant cut, whatever to deal with this. So yeah, just cut down what you need to. So that's the answer to a lot of your containment measures. Remember our incident response. We detect a problem. We confirm that the detection was right. A smoke detector might not really have seen a fire, but once I do, how bad is it? And once I determine, oh, my customer records are being leaked, there's a breach going on, whatever, containment measures as small as possible. Don't shut down the machine. Just microsegment that troubled API if you can. All right, now EAP, and we talked about is for layer 2 access, and we'll know more about that on network, but that means I get access to the network and I can start sending stuff. Today, that's not popular. We don't really want that anymore. In zero trust, we don't consider you inside the network. So instead of giving you a layer 2 connection, now you can create frames, kind of like microsegmentation, we just allow the APIs. And that's really, go back to that slide here. That's really where these things come in. EAP is to get you, and we'll know more about it, but it's basically you're allowed in the building. Here it says, meet me at the window and I'll give you your French fries, and we'll make sure those French fries are authenticated. You're supposed to get French fries. Got it? All right. Monitoring, we have to, again, we got to keep a look at things. It look good, and I've got to have something, and that's what our SIM tools really do. They look at the thing, and we talked about IDS yesterday, and try to figure out, is this an attack? Is this normal? An emerging trends, the zero trust architecture, again, is not assuming there's ever an insider. There's no more insiders because more and more people are going perimeterless. All their IT infrastructure is in the cloud. All their users could be anywhere in the world. I don't even know what machines they're using, which is a trouble. I don't want to just trust Bob. Whenever possible, I'd like to trust the machine. Depending on your risk assessment, again, you have TPM chip on your machine. You can identify the machine, and that's how Microsoft and Azure is doing that type of management. All right, that's how they provide that Entra and identity and access management. Is they're doing it by identifying the machine with a certificate with PKI, and now we can say, Bob, you're allowed in, but not on your phone, only on the company blessed whatever laptop that has mobile device management. Do you ever hear of that, Evan? You ever hear of MDM, mobile device management?
Yes.
Okay, so you know some of the major features, right? And I can remotely, well, we want all the mobile devices to be encrypted, right? So if somebody steals it, we want to be able maybe even do a remote wipe, but it should be encrypted today. But we can also lock down when they try to do installation of third-party software that we might not trust, right?
Yeah.
It's not unlike how iPhone maintains what's allowed in the iStore, but even more granular. All right. Nice. I didn't want to rush you at lunch. I didn't think I had too much left over. But again, it's not a big domain, but it's extremely important and probably where most of our problems happen. Let's take a look at, not from just users, look at the OWASP project and get you to understand where I'm coming from. And David, you should be very familiar with these. These are the top 10. Now, this is the Open Web Application Security Project. They are the go-to for developers, things that Larry's not very smart on. You're going to see Larry's much better tomorrow, transport layer on down. But for developers, this is the go-to place. This is where you go to find out best practices and coding and stuff like that. And these are the top 10. Now they're calling them risks. They used to call them vulnerabilities. I just caught that. That used to be the top 10 vulnerabilities. Now they're just, so now is it a threat or a vulnerability? Because some people would say, wait, that's more of a threat versus a vulnerability. Remember, the threat is what they could do. The vulnerability is the fact that this will allow it. So the threat is they could burn it. The vulnerability is it's flammable. All right. So what are the top? Broken access control. It's number one. So, that's my point. We don't know who's who. People especially don't have certificates. We might have them. I mean, we should have to have them for servers. I'm proud of Dropbox for whatever crappy ass handshake they picked. At least they had a certificate. They were obviously using OpenID for that. But it's number one. Cryptographic failures, for whatever reason, we could beat them up. But injection is when I ask you to put in your username or whatever, your phone number, and you put in something else, SQL command, SQL injection. Insecure design, you just didn't stop the thing. You put a steel door on, but you had whatever open windows, a straw house. People didn't configure it, which is often just patch management. It's hard to maintain configurations and configuration baselines. You just found out, like, I'm picking on Dropbox, and I said, I'm just as bad. That was a stupid configuration, but it's hard. Vulnerable and outdated components, identification, authentication failure. Isn't that a lot like broken access control? To me, these two go together. But this could be an authorization. I knew who you were. But once you said, hey, yeah, I'm Bob, I let you into the refrigerator where they keep the lobsters and the steak, and all you were here was to take out the trash. Software and data integrity failures, security logging failures, and people don't look at the log. And then server-side request forgery. We'll get into that. I want to make people's heads blow up, but there are Whenever somebody forges something in insurance, what are they probably forging? A check. It's probably money related. And a lot of times when it's a client side, it's a bank, but we'll look at server side. It's a newer thing. In fact, do they have it over here? No, all right. We'll worry about that later. But number one, to my point, broken access control. So as simple as the concept might sound, it is not very easy to properly do our access control, physically or otherwise. Just like when I told you guys when I'm doing some work at, hypothetically, I didn't record this scenario, but hypothetically at a secure site, and they had probably insecure wireless, not realizing that people outside this secure place could still. Anyway, all right. Any questions or anything? Awesome. Well, do me a favor, keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to pause the recording. I'll stay here for a couple minutes. So.